Yeah, there's a very strong quote from Muhammad Ali. The will is better than the skill. This hits me so hard at times, and I'm thinking that there are like 5,000 things I don't know and I can learn. But if I don't even have the will, I can't even do one of those.
Hey, welcome to My Best Hire. I'm your host, Rajiv Soni. On this show, we decode how great leaders identify exceptional talent and how outstanding professionals become invaluable to their organizations. Through in-depth conversations with executives and business leaders, we uncover both sides of the success equation, helping leaders build stronger teams while showing professionals how to stand out and make a lasting difference. So, whether you are building teams or looking to advance your own career, join us as we explore the stories of remarkable talent and the leaders who recognized their potential. Today on My Best Hire, I'm thrilled to welcome Anuvind Kanwal. Hey Anuvind.
Hey
So,
Rajiv, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Anuvind. So, there's a very interesting story. So, Anuvind that I met for the first time when I hired Anuvind for a company as an intern, and he was certainly one of the best interns that I worked with during that time period. And now, 10 years later, he is a marketing technology maestro who has been perfecting the art of automation marketing at scale. Just this month, he was promoted and stepped into a new role of Senior Program Manager of Marketing Technology at Miro, where he is architecting global marketing technology ecosystem and driving innovation across the Miro's amazing growth engine. His journey has taken him through some of the world's most recognizable brands, from optimizing customer loyalty programs across 17 European markets at justeattakeaway.com to crafting sophisticated CRM strategies for over 10 brands at Estee Lauder companies. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Anuvind is a true global citizen. He has traveled to 101 countries and embraces the Persian concept of Musafir, a perpetual traveler. From the day that he worked for me, I know that he has this special talent that he can connect with the person that he's speaking with across different cultures, and he speaks 6 languages at this point of time. And this capability of his to be able to make anybody instantly comfortable and meet them at their place and at their level has allowed him to be an amazing professional who can really combine the technology as well as the talent development and the team that he's leading. Now, Anuvind joins us today from Amsterdam to share insights about his best hire and the valuable lessons that he has learned about identifying exceptional talent in really a rapidly evolving marketing technology landscape, just with the AI and everything else happening. Anuvind, I'm so happy to have you on the show, and I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your own experience and about your own journey, and then we can jump into your best hire.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. It's an honor, Rajiv, to have this conversation with you after what, like 11 years? 11 odd years. It's been such a long time, now that I think of it. Uh, I'm not even in touch with, my college friends who I met 11 years ago, but we are still have a connection. This is something that I'm quite proud of, and this just shows that if you want to stay in touch with someone, it can happen. But thank you for that introduction. Actually, now it's 115 countries. I need to update my LinkedIn. It's something I'm working on right now. Yeah, like if I can put about myself in one way, I think Musafir is a word that really encompasses a lot of my traits. As you said, I really like this people to people connection. I think this is what energizes me. Even though I have been, I did my engineering, I always felt that, I would be more suited for a role where I can use my tech skills and be at the forefront of something where I can, also talk to people and do stuff for them. So this MarkTech is absolutely like the right perfect spot for me. When we were working together, I remember we were working on the product management space, and I think I was also exploring that field for a while, but then I realized, you know what, I think I'm going to stick with MarkTech. I'm going to stick with MarkTech over there. But yeah, so far about myself, I am currently living in Amsterdam, but I'm a born and brought up Delhi wala. I speak Delhi. You can take me out of Delhi, but you can't take the Delhi out of me. That's the usual thing that I always tell people. I've always lived there for the first 22 years of my life. It's been only for the last 7 8 years that I've not lived in Delhi. I've lived in Europe for that time. I lived in France. I briefly lived in Germany, but now I live in Netherlands in Amsterdam. And it's also been a journey, to move between all these different countries and trying to learn a bit of their languages, because in Europe, there's a knack of everyone I meet here is a multilingual. Like, everyone speaks like four languages. And I always feel like, wow, that's so impressive. And that's how I also have to pick up languages, because otherwise, how are you going to survive in this environment?
True.
Yeah, but currently I work in the marketing space, and I think I really enjoy working in this space because of the people to people connection and also the kind of product. So yeah, currently I'm working in the marketing space, and this is a space I really adore because, as you said, like there's so much happening with this AI revolution. A lot of people call it a trend. I don't think it's a trend, guys. Like it's a
Yeah.
revolution.
True.
It's already there. I mean, if there are two kind of people in the world, one who are already using it and getting on board of this wagon, and they are improving the productivity and all the other spheres, and others who still have their head in the sand. And these are the kind of people, like who I feel that they need to really look forward to, because there is so many things that are happening even for our daily day-to-day things, which AI is kind of like improvising. A big part of my role is to optimize different martech stacks that we have using
Hmm.
AI, of course.
Yeah.
I'm also working to enable a big part of my team who are using these technologies and making them understand how they can use it better. I have been an end user for many of these technologies, in the past. So I think I also come from a space where I can tell what works and what doesn't work, and really pinpoint to the right user experience in order to increase this whole workflow management part. I also have the experience of mentoring a few people now, and managing some of them as well. So I think for the context of this conversation, we'll be going through some of those amazing stories that we are going to be sharing.
Absolutely. Let's dive right into it. So, who are we speaking about today?
Um, so I was conflicted. There have been a few people that I have had the experience, or rather, I had the honor of mentoring and managing them from ground up. And I was kind of confused that who I should pick it up. There are few who I remember very well. There are few who I don't remember very well. But then there's this one person who I remember very well. She's a very good friend of mine. She has been someone that even though I was the one who hired her, and I was the one who mentored her in her early career, I learned so much from her. It was a two-way learning street. It was a bi-directional flow of information. And I want to talk about Joanna today, Joanna Rosadio. She was one of the she was actually the second intern that I hired when I was working at Estee Lauder for a CRM analyst internship. And for me, this was like, this was also a new manager at that time. And for me, the whole experience about managing someone when you are 23 is a whole learning curve in itself. But at the same time, the kind of experience that we shared. And for the context of this conversation, I want to talk about the mutual resonance that we had together and the kind of like shared experiences that we had, when we were on this learning curve.
Awesome. Can you speak about an incident?
Absolutely. So when we worked at Estee Lauder, we had, standardized procedures and ways of working on certain things. And these ways of working were like, the kind of role she was in and the kind of department I was in. It was the CRM department. That means we were working for many different brands. And a big part of about our job was to analyze their CRM campaigns. These included everything from email campaigns to also other channels. Provide them best practices and recommendations in terms of what they can do to improve it. And this is very, I'm talking about 2017, 2018 actually. This is the time when AI was not there. You could not just put numbers into a chat GPT and tell them the recommendations. You had to actually manually look at each and every number. This was the
Mm.
time when you had to give these diversification of ideas. And this was the time when people, like, the data analyst role really had a bit of a weight to it. But nowadays, anyone and everyone is a data analyst.
They have
And
to be, absolutely. Just
everyone.
one quick question. When you're talking about the CRM, Estee Lauder, can you talk about the company itself? Who were the customers and this CRM that you are speaking about? Are you talking about the end consumers? Are you talking about the distributors?
No, yeah, absolutely. Let me go with this way. So at Estee Lauder, we had a CRM department, and when I talk about CRM, CRM is customer relationship management. For this context, there's the B2C CRM. That means going towards the end customers, using the online channels, using their own store channels. Estee Lauder is a big portfolio of many different brands like Bobbi Brown, Estee Lauder, Kleenex, MAC Cosmetics, but all those different brands, they're either selling on their own channels, that is their own stores. They're also selling on third party channels like Sephora or other retailers, and there is also an online space. So when I talk about CRM, we talk about different ways we reach out to the customers directly using the email channel, and how we can optimize the whole CRM process, increase the lifecycle marketing strategy.
Understood. Understood. All right. Now that we have the background, let's jump into what did she do?
Yeah. Um, so we have this CRM space, and we have ways of working in which we work with certain brands in a way that we analyze the data for them. We used to analyze the data for them, and we used to give them best practice and recommendations on what to do and what to improve. Now this is a very monotonous process. You have to manually extract the numbers, do analysis, and then provide those certain recommendations. Now, initially, when you're doing this, it is quite complicated in the sense that you can feel a bit overwhelmed, especially as a young graduate who has never dealt with so many numbers. And when we talk about numbers, we're talking about millions of users. We're
Mhm.
talking about a scale. That is something I want to pinpoint here. We're not talking about, hey, these are the 10 users, send them an email. We're talking about millions of users exhibiting a certain buying pattern on certain channels. So there could be one user who is exhibiting a very high purchasing pattern on the online channel, and the same user could be not be exhibiting a very high purchasing pattern on the offline channel. So the recommendation is how they can make the customer an omni-channel customer. So when we are looking at all these numbers, and especially as an intern, so when she was working with me, we worked. Spoiler alert, she finally got a job as well at that company, and now she's doing pretty well, and she's still at that company. But when she was working and she started off, she was an intern, and for an intern, she was giving, not just giving all these best practices, but she was trying to find ways where all this monotonous and very manual process could be automated. And that is something no one was paying attention to, even including myself. We were like, hey, there's this proper set of way of doing things. Let's just follow it. Let's extract these users, and let's just put them through the funnel. We do the analysis. We just give the recommendation. This, for one brand, it could take up to 1 week to get things done. However, she was
Okay.
able to optimize the whole process in a way that she was able to do it for 3 or 4 brands within 1 week. And the results were there. For me, I was just quite flabbergasted how she was able to do that. For me, this was also quite a bit of learning.
Okay.
But at the same time, our team was quite well recognized for that particular work that she did, because we had a bit of a deadlines coming up for certain brands, and we always have to manage the expectations. And I think the whole optimization of the process, where the whole productivity was increased, really led us into this limelight.
Understood. So, what do you think? What are the skills and capabilities that she brought to the table that allowed her to do this?
I think the first thing, uh, and there are multiple things here. One thing that you always need to, whenever you're working in this kind of environment, there are two things that you need to take care of. The first thing is always around what you're setting expectations for. And I'm of a firm believer that you should under promise and over deliver, rather than
Mm-hmm.
over promising and under delivering. And this is one thing where, because she had an experience, she was from Peru, and she had already worked with a big luxury cosmetics company in Latin America, in Peru, back in the day. So she knew what these kind of environments take on you, and how you need to behave in certain way. So it was
Mm-hmm.
never like, she was over promising, saying, hey, I'm going to get this done. And hey, I'll get 5 things done within 1 week. She never did that. And I think this made me like have low expectations, in the way that the expectations are normal. She's going to do it, and she's an intern, she's going to make some mistakes. Interns sometimes make mistakes, we're going to correct them, and then the whole process is going to be very smooth. However, it was the surprise factor, where she didn't really mention what she was working on, but when we saw the results, we were like, wow, this is something. So she was under promising, and she not just over delivered, but the process she created of delivering was something that we could also scale. We could use it for scale. And the second thing which I think she had the skill for was, she worked very well when she was empowered, and she had the skill of being very autonomous. So even though she didn't know
Hmm.
how something needs to be done, she used to take the night off, and she used to understand that, and the next day she could be a semi expert on it, not an expert, but a semi expert. So she would know most things about how things are happening in that direction. So I mean, I'm a very quick learner. Sometimes I do believe, and I like to believe, that I'm a very quick
Yeah.
learner. People might disagree, some of my managers might disagree on that.
I'm
Let's
one of them. I would say that, okay, you are a quick learner.
People have their opinion, but I would like to believe that. But I was quite impressed with how fast she was learning tasks, and not just intern tasks, not just tasks about, hey, let me send this email, or hey, let me just drop this, but
Mm-hmm.
actual tasks about, proving that she's ready to take on the next role. So she was already showing that momentum from the second month or so. And for me, this was quite phenomenal for an intern.
Understood. A lot of really, really good professionals. They not only are they really good at what they are working on by themselves, but they also elevate the rest of the team, at times even their managers, to the new levels. Can you talk about some of that? Okay, where she inspired rest of the team, she inspired even you to actually do better, maybe during the internship or afterwards.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Rajiv here. I always say that managing someone or mentoring someone is a two-way street. So it's a two-way street. It's a very bi-directional process. If it's only unidirectional, it's not working. This is my opinion. If you are the only one who is giving and you're not getting anything back, it's again very
Mm-hmm.
unidirectional. If you're not managing someone, but the person you're managing is only giving to you, that's also very dysfunctional in my opinion. Actually, more dysfunctional now I think of it. But
Yeah.
mentoring and managing is a very two-way street. You give experience, you have an experience, you know how things are done, you get experience either by failing or learning or doing things. And when you share this as a manager or as a mentor, you always get things back, like you always get certain experiences or certain nuances from it which you might not have thought about happening, because everyone is set
Hmm.
in their own ways. If
Yep.
something works for you, if something works for me, I might not even have the courage of trying something new because I already have a way which works. Why should I take the risk of trying something new which might fail? That's the kind of assumption whenever you're working in corporate environment.
Absolutely.
Everyone is thinking in the same way, to do the basics in the way that everything stays safe and not take as limited number of risks as possible. But I think the kind of employees or the kind of people or the kind of people that you manage who
Mm-hmm.
really make an impact on you, that means are the kind of people who make you look other ways, who make you look what are the other directions you can also look at, which you never would think of. And I think this
Hmm.
is something she was very good at. Every week she used to constantly, not force me, force is a very strong word, but she used to constantly direction me to look in a certain way which I didn't think of. That made sense. We were always working in this way that, this thing works. A is equal to B is equal to C. That means A is equal to C. But we realized later we can also do other things where A could be C, from the very get go. And those are the
Understood.
very small nuances. And I'm not even talking about creating strategy or optimizing the strategy. I'm
Hmm.
not even going in that direction. I'm talking about very small nuances in your day to day work, which can make you believe that this person actually makes some sense. Let me take a step
Okay.
back. Let me ponder over the thought of it. And I think this is what she was constantly making all of us do. And that was incredible.
Nice. Do you remember one or two specific examples of specific things that she forced you to rethink?
Yes. So one thing that I can definitely that I can definitely talk about is that whenever we were running on some analysis for these brands, again we were like a consultant within the company. We were the consultants within the company. The brands used to come to us, say, guys, hey guys from the corporate, help us understand why our customers are not coming back on the online channel, help us understand why our customers are not coming back on the offline channel. Whenever we were running those analysis, we were only looking at data which is coming from our own stores, and our own channels, and we were not really looking into data that is coming from other retailers and other things, because there was a delay on it, so we never used to get it on time.
Of
There were
course.
also like a lot of data regulations and privacy and compliance and all those things which made us not get that data on time. So we always had a half view of the customer, and we were trying to create a persona of the user with this half view in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, she had an idea that, while we wait for this data, there are also some other channels, and there are also some other behavioral data of the user which we can take into account. For example, if a user, so we had different links on our websites, on our e-commerce sites, which take users to, all these different platforms. So she was like, hey, maybe we can also take that data into account, which can also show the intuition. So even though we don't have an actual purchase level data for these users from all those retail channels because of XYZ reasons, but we can also create a model based on this intuition of users actually clicking on it, going, and how many of them actually use that link to create an account, which can help us understand if all these users who are not using, for example, an online channel, again, an example, do they still have an intuition of going to the retailers or not? Now, it's a very
Hmm.
simple thing. You look at the intuition of a user, which in itself, it doesn't show much because an intuition is not attribution. However, given the scarcity of data that we had at that time about any kind of user, anything was better than nothing. And none of us even thought about, hey, we can also use this intuition into account and, create a whole journey around it. And I think these were a few of those ideas which she had, which I felt they were not contemporarily out of the box. It's just that we were so much in box that she could see outside. That's how I always say,
Yes,
like, sometimes you meet people who can think out of the box, and sometimes you meet people who can just show you outside because you are in the box.
exactly.
So yeah,
Absolutely. I completely understand that. You get into a particular pattern and those patterns continue to remain there, right? Okay, that's how you think, that's how it works. And at times you require the breakage in pattern to actually start thinking about, okay, oh, there are other things which are possible too. And it happens. It's very, very natural. And it's great to actually have somebody like that on your team who can actually help you break that pattern, or at least snap out of it for some time, that allows you to approach a problem or a solution from a very different perspective. So, how did she come to be a part of your team? Let's talk a little bit about her hiring story.
yeah. I mean, sometimes I think about this whole story. To me, it's also, they kind of incidences in your life when and you don't remember everything, but sometimes you're just sitting down there, waiting for the next metro to come, and there is something that just snaps up. This is one of those stories, that just snaps in my mind when I'm, waiting for something, because this was like so close to not happening
Okay.
that I actually think that, hey, the fact that it happened, and the fact that, I had the pleasure and the opportunity of meeting this great person who I had the experience of managing, mentoring, and now sometimes also learning from is something to be shared upon, to be honest with you. So let me take a step back and let me go towards that the early months of 2018. This is when this happened.
Hmm.
Or actually late months of 2018. Yeah, actually, the fall of 2018 is when this happened. This is when we were looking for a second intern. I was working in France, and in France, there's this concept of when you graduate from a business school, you need to do an end of studies internship. This is usually a 6 months internship, unlike in India, which could be a couple of months. In France, this is like a 6 months internship, and if there is a right opportunity for you, you can get that converted to a full time job. So this is basically a job before an actual job starts happening, and there's a lot of stakes over here because you're treated as a full time employee in the 6 months, and
Of
6 months
course.
is a very 6 months is also a very decent period, to show yourself. Unlike in a couple of months when you can, slack off a bit. I had already hired an intern, before I met Joanna, and her internship was coming to an end, and we were looking to replace her with another intern because you can only do it for 6 months. You can't extend it. There are very specific regulations and laws around it. So we were
Okay.
looking to find another intern to join my CRM team, and I was doing the applications. We had contacted a few business schools out there. We had few students reaching out to us directly. So we were in the interview process. Usually, we had an analytical test around it. It's a very standardized process that was there. You had to clear that up in a specific amount of time in a specific way, and then you can do other parts of the interview process. So I invited Joanna to my office, and she was working on that analytical test, and I had a few questions. It's very very simplistic, but again, for an intern, now I think of it, it's very overwhelming. It's not something, and again, these cognitive ability tests are good when you have a certain environment. However, for certain individuals in certain environments, these can also be very biased, and these are kind of things that it depends on place by place, workplace by workplace. That is the space that I was working in. So we had this test, and she was able to answer most of those questions on that particular test, but she was slow. Slow, not slow in the sense that she was not able to answer, but she was taking her own sweet time.
Hmm.
And again, I met a few people before her, and I also did a few interviews after her, and many people were like very fast, able to answer that. But then I also had a one-to-one with Joanna, just to understand, and she was going through some personal issues at the time. But at the same time, despite her personal circumstances, she was there. She was able to answer most of those questions, and she asked me very smart questions about, where do we want to take our team, in this
Hmm.
whole CRM space. And none of the other interns did ask me in the whole interview process. So I was very close, before she asked me all these questions, I was very close to, move on to the next candidate. That's what usually happens in a hiring process. You find that one thing and then you're looking for a unicorn. This is a very
Yes.
common human trait and a human bias also. And sometimes we all go through that. You find that one mistake and then you want the next unicorn. And I think I was very close to getting to that stage and had already made my mind. And, when she was talking, I was already looking at next CVs. And I was thinking, hey, maybe I can interview more people. But then she asked me these very smart questions, some things which I never even thought of, like, how am I doing my job? What can we do to, automate more things? How we can have better relationship and expectations management. And this is because she
Hmm.
had already done something very similar back home.
Okay.
And she had the experience to ask those questions,
Hmm.
even though she was not very rounded for this standardized procedure of hiring, but she was very well rounded for the role. So at
Hmm.
that time, I had to make a choice. Am I hiring for the interview or am I hiring for the role? And I thought to myself, I'm hiring for the role. I'm not hiring someone who cracks great interviews because I think every second person can do that. I'm hiring for someone who can do this job better. And I think she can do that. So I think this is, again, it was a big learning for me from the very first day that am I hiring someone for the interview or am I hiring someone for the role? And I think sometimes
Absolutely.
there's such a big gap, Raji. I'm sure you might have also faced this in your very extensive career that you have these choices that you have to make. That am I hiring this person for just cracking this interview, or is it more for the role? Because sometimes there is a big delta between the two.
Oh, there is. Interviews tend to become a performance art rather than a conversation about whether the person is the right fit for the role or not. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right that interview is not the microcosm for the job. We have to stop treating interviews like that. Interviews are a assessment. They are a point in time assessment of whether the person would be in the right fit for the position that you are hiring for or not. Like our product Effective Hire is exactly for this, takes out the bias away from the interview process so that the interviews don't become this performative piece, right? Which some people are able to hack those interviews extremely well, but when they come into the job, their skills don't match up to what the role is required to be done. And then there are other people who don't necessarily interview that well, but are absolutely perfect when they jump into the position. So I completely understand, and that is actually exactly is what we are trying to build from the Effective Hire. Please continue.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you can't check off everything. This is what I always tell, people now who are hiring for different roles in the company. But if you give a chance for them to speak out outside the whole, standardized process of doing things, that is when you would actually learn more about them. And that is what you should also take into account, and this is what a lot of,
True.
hiring processes miss. They don't take that part into account. And I was so close to doing that, and I'm so glad, sometimes I think, had I made the decision of, hey, this person doesn't meet those four different checklist requirements, let me just move on. What would have happened to me? Would I have had the same experience? Maybe not, maybe yes. But there are these very small 1 minute decisions and 1 minute choices that also shape a lot of your career. And I think that 1 minute decision of me listening to her questions and answering them and trying to understand where she's coming from
Hmm.
made me also learn quite a few things.
Understood. So let's jump into that. Working with Johanna, how did you think that your own perspective about work and about the people shifted, improved, or transformed?
Many things actually. So I always consider myself as someone who is like, whenever I'm mentoring and managing people, I give them space, and I think this is my way of working. We have a set expectation. You need to deliver on those expectations. It could be A, B, C, or D, and that's how I have been managed. So, for a long time in my career, there was a short time when I was being micromanaged, and I can tell you I don't work very well under. any form of micromanagement, for the simple reason being, I'm not a micromanager myself. And I always see things from the way that, you need to empower people, you need to make them autonomous. They need to learn it. If they fail, they fail, but they need to learn it, pick up the slack, and just get on from there. And this is how you create very strong individuals. Yeah. And this is also how you not create yes man. And I think of a big philosophy that I don't want people in my team who are like yes man 24/7, because if you're having that kind of experience, you're also not learning. And for me, this was a big culture shock, by the way, Rajiv. When I moved from India to France, and when I was an intern myself, before all this happened, before I hired Johanna, I was an intern myself at the same company, and this was my second or third day, and we had a meeting, with this big head of brand marketing department and something, and a few interns. And I saw the few interns were challenging that guy, left, right, and center, and they were
Yeah,
asking very critical questions. And I was like, wow, this is a very different working environment. This is an environment where, people are really expressing themselves. And this person who had like at least 20 years of, working experience in that domain,
yeah.
he's not batting an eye. Like, he's very open to those
Hmm.
conversations. And this made me realize that, how effective a two-way communication is. And it doesn't matter if someone is critiquing you. It is better that you get critiqued than find a team of yes man all around you. Think
Absolutely.
I think this is what she made me realize, that I don't need, and I don't like people who are always saying yes to whatever I say. I want people who challenge me, because at the same time, maybe I'm not thinking in the right direction. And in this way, we can optimize the whole process and be more productive. And I think this is my biggest learning curve from this experience as well.
Understood. Okay. Makes sense. So you were her manager. So, how did you lead the team? How did you make sure that she was getting the right opportunities and she was developing her own career in the way that she wanted?
Yeah. So when you're working in a big company, there are a lot of, organizational expectations around it. There's a bit of pressure around it. And especially when you're an intern, you have the added pressure of, will I be able to convert it to a full-time job? I'm coming from a different country. There's so many different XYZ factors around it. There's so many moving pieces of the puzzle. And for
Exactly.
me,
Yeah, navigating a large organization is an art in itself.
it's an
And as an
art.
intern, yeah,
Yeah, like you just imagine, like there are people who have spent 10, 20 years in the same company, and even they are like, they're not as heard of. And as an intern, to just make a voice of yourself and just to make yourself visible is quite a challenge. And I think what I realized, because I was in her shoes about an year and a half ago. So I was doing exactly very similar to what she was doing. And I realized, like, the only way of managing the whole hustle and bustle around it is to focus on empowerment over micromanagement of any different kind, and also siding away and from this whole organizational pressure. You have a bubble, and again, as an intern, you do have a bubble. You do very well in the bubble, and in the spaces you get the chance of being visible and making yourself heard. You do that. You take those opportunities and you grab it with both the hands. These are the opportunities when you meet people who are going to make the final hiring decision, when they're going to be hiring you or not. And I think this is what I had realized, and this is what I was trying to also mentor with her. Whenever we had these conversations, hey, this is what you should keep doing. If you're going to meeting someone who's going to be very important, I think this is what you should do. You should be more visible, and when you should not be visible, you can't be visible
yeah,
24/7.
true.
These environments, if you're visible 24/7, something is wrong. If you're not visible 24/7, something is wrong. So you need to know when to turn it on and off. And I think this is very important. You need to understand when you are required to speak and when you should not speak. And not just speaking, but like, being visible, being proactive, and all those different things. And I think what I was doing is that I was telling her when to turn the switch on and off. And this is very important, because a lot of people, they might be very good at their job. They might have all the skills in the world, but sometimes they don't know when to be out there and when to challenge it and when to not challenge it. And sometimes it creates a lot of friction with the team. Sometimes
Hmm.
team members think that they're stepping on someone's shoes and all that stuff. So I was just telling her from my experience on when to turn this switch on and off. And I think she was very quick learner, in the sense that she figured it out, and she was able to make an impression in the leadership roles and in the people who got making a final hiring decision around her.
Dude, you were there for a year and a half. Like, okay, you were just finding your bearings and then you being able to do it for her. Definitely speaks about your own capabilities as well as the capabilities that she brought to the table, where you were able to help her navigate through this. So, kudos to both of you. Yeah. All right, so let's come to the last part of our conversation. One of the very important parts is the takeaways. So, what did you learn hiring Johanna in your team? What did you learn about recruitment and recruiting? We have already spoken about it to some extent, but any parting thoughts?
I think one thing that is always ringing in my mind when I think about this scenario, Rajiv, is that there is no one size fits all approach. There is this very strong and wrong, strong and wrong. I'm going to use those words here. A belief that hey, everyone who goes through this process can fill this one bucket, which has a top layer, a middle layer, and a bottom layer. It is so difficult to do that. If you go through the nuances and if you look at how people as individuals behave in certain scenarios, no one has this one size fits all approach, and this will not work. When you're trying to hire someone, you can't have the expectation of everyone showing the same personality traits. I mean, we all have our own life experiences,
Exactly.
and based on that, we show different traits, and this is quite important. And I think this is something I did learn. I also learned so much about empowering rather than controlling. I mean, I again, I'm never a micromanager, but I think that what taught me is that even if you're not micromanager, sometimes you can still be a micromanager even though you don't know that you're being a micromanager, in the sense
Right.
that you can be saying all the time, hey, I'm not a micromanager, but then you're asking someone about one thing 10 times, like, and you're having certain expectation. However, the focus or the onus should be on you to actually empower them, so that rather than you asking them, they come to you and tell you on their own that, hey, this is what's happening, tell me what to do. So from
Yes.
the time that, and I think this is what questioning is. If I'm asking more questions to my team members, to people I'm managing and my mentors and the people I'm mentoring, I think that is a bit wrong. They should be the one coming to me and asking all these questions so that I can guide them
Hmm.
better and I can give them
Yeah.
more tailored responses. Because otherwise, it's just all in my head that this person is working in a certain way. Whereas if they come and ask me questions, they can have a much more personalized and customized way of me mentoring them as compared to the other way around. And I think this is also something that I always do. I ask them, come back to me, ask questions. And I think the third thing, I think this is from you, Rajiv. Now, you were my manager at one time, and I always tell people that, one of my first managers was less of a manager to me, but more of a mentor to me. And this is what I always try to do as well. I have been trying to take this as an opportunity, a two-directional opportunity to also have mentorship and also get mentoring in some cases where, I feel that I have certain shortcomings. And I remember, we had so many conversations, so many brainstorming sessions around, all those product roadmaps and all those
Yeah.
wireframes that we used to work on. And I used to challenge them. I used to challenge a few things that you were doing, and you used to take them quite openly. I remember, and I think the whole experience of me working with someone like you at a very early stage in my career, like, I'm talking about when I was not even 20, made me realize that, there are certain things that I can also be very open about, keep my head open, brain open, be ready for feedback. Because at the end of the day, if you're keeping the feedback loop complete, you're making sure that the relationship is not unidirectional. It's a bi-directional relationship, or rather a multi-directional relationship where
Exactly.
you are also contributing and being contributed back.
Absolutely. 100%. I completely get that. So you
Yeah.
spoke quite a bit about the leadership and like leading the right people the right way. Anything else you want to add within that when you actually have such amazing people working with you? Like I had you, you had Johanna. What are the leadership principles that you learned to think about or apply besides the ones that we've already spoken about?
Potential over pedigree. There's a very strong, let me think of it. Yeah, there's a very strong quote from Muhammad Ali, this
Mm-hmm.
boxer Muhammad Ali, and it was like, not, I'm trying to quote it and I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
paraphrase it.
Sure.
He said something like, not everyone has the skill, but sometimes the will is better than the skill, or the will is higher than the skill. And
Yes.
for me, this hits me so hard at times, and I'm thinking that I don't know. There are like 5,000 things I don't know, and I can learn. But if I don't even have the will, I can't even do one of those or five of those. I think this is what I always say. There should be focus on potential that you see,
Hmm.
and potential is not something that you can quantify. It's something, there's a lot of empathetic, intuitive aspect to it, and you need to be, either again you're a mind reader, which most people are not, even though they claim to be, or you need to, have this sense about, how people behave and interact, and have this very certain feeling about an individual, and then you can figure out, hey, this person has a potential. And I always focus on, if someone has a potential rather than if they are a pedigree, or if they are like, this born talented individual.
Yeah.
From that sense, there's always this, for some of our football fans who would be reading this. This is like this debate between Messi and Ronaldo. I'm not
Yeah.
supporting anyone, guys. Don't come to me and say you like one or the other. But I'm just saying, this is very similar to that debate, because one has very high potential, one is a very strong pedigree. Which one is which? So I'm not going to go in that direction.
Okay. Got it. Got it. All right. So we'll figure out. We'll have some healthy debate on that at some
Yeah,
point
we
of
will do.
time. Okay. Coming to the very last point, I can say with no no exaggeration that you have been one of the very best people that I have worked with. Okay. And you are among those really remarkable professionals that I have had the privilege of working with. Okay. So, from your own experiences, as well as from the experiences that you had with Johanna, as well as many of the other people that you have worked with, what would you recommend for somebody who is maybe just starting out their professional life, or they are already kind of in the middle of their professional life? Okay, how can they continue to improve? How can they become the people that we speak about on My Best Hire?
They should be transcripting this podcast and taking it note by note and line by line. I'm kidding. But first of all, thank you, Rajiv. And again, it's always a pleasure. It's always an honor to speak to you, because we have so much in common. And at the same time, I always feel that every time I'm speaking to you, I'm still learning. Still a few things from you. So I'm very happy that you felt that way about me. But I think the one thing which early starters and mid-career professionals who are going into this world of where AI is going to be everything. Like nowadays, I've been reading so many series lately. No one writes all those things about I know Microsoft Office, or I know Google Office. Like you remember, like 10 years ago, people used to write that. That was an actual thing. Hey, I know how to do PowerPoint or Word. No one does it now. That's very redundant as a skill. Now I'm seeing more people talking about prompt engineering, more people talking about how they can use a certain LLM model, and how they can, create. People are also creating agents. Even marketers. A lot of marketers, early product managers, they're creating their own agents. They have their own way of working. So me, this is like amazing. And I think for a lot of early career and a mid, starter people who are coming to the corporate industry professional life right now, I think
Mm-hmm.
they need to be very open to it. This is going to be more dynamic than what we faced, around 10
Yeah.
years ago, when the industry was just in the learning curve, going upwards at a 60-degree slope. Now the slope is 90. Now the slope is
Yes.
going much more. And in order to trail it, and now it's not hiking anymore, it's climbing. And in order to
Yes.
climb that, you need to be very focused, and you need to have strong mentors who are guiding you, and you need to be open to it. If you're not open to it, or if you're not even like concerned that what's happening in industry bothers you, yeah, that's going to be a bit of a struggle, moving up and climbing that. But if you're open to it, you're open to new ideas, new suggestions, you're open to improving, I think this is a very, it's a very fast way for you to, get up. Because think about it, when you're hiking, it takes you a long time, but when you're climbing, you can climb up very fast and very easily. And I think this is what the current macroeconomic environment is. You need to be a climber than a hiker.
Absolutely. And just to not give into that metaphor completely, but the idea is that okay, it's not the survival of the strongest or the survival of the smartest or the survival of any other like specific attribute of anything else. It's actually the survival of the most adaptable. So if someone is really adaptable, till sometime some years ago, it was like these web3 technologies, right? Understanding that okay, now it is the AI, now it is prompt engineering, and it will change, and the pace of that change is also accelerating. So being adaptable in the job market in your professions becomes very important. Like if you were doing martech like just 5 years ago, what martech was versus what it is now, there's a world of difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a new favorite word that I have, and I always keep throwing around in every second conversation. And so if those people hear this, they would know this. But it's resilience and being resilient. You need to be resilient, adaptable, resilient. I think those are very, very common words. And for me, again, it's a matter of will. It's not a matter of skill. You can get the skill. Skills are quite transferable, and you can easily pick up those skills. And even if you don't have the skills, we will get you those skills. But
Hmm.
if you don't have the will, I'm sorry, I can't get you the will. You're either born with a will or you get one on the way.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, so they are basically like three types of skills, right? Okay, hey, they are the skills that are teachable. Okay, so many of the skills we already know about. They are skills that are learnable. And then there are the skills which are not teachable and not learnable. You have to generate from within. And
That's correct.
will is one of those capabilities that you have to generate from within. You cannot go ahead and learn it. And obviously, no one can actually give it to you as well.
Absolutely. You just nailed it on the head. Absolutely right.
Awesome, 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 awesome. On it. So on
Perfect.
that high note, Anuvind, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I am proud of you, the professional that you have become, and having the privilege of like being one of your early managers. This conversation just fills me with joy. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you so much, Rajiv. I'm so happy. We had this podcast, this conversation, and again, it was a privilege to have met you 11 years ago, and it's still a privilege to know you after 11 years. Huh? Can you believe that?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
All right. Have a good
All
one.
right. Thank you.